Hey everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing something a little different. Instead of a typical biographical deep dive, we're going to talk about a moment that profoundly shook the Hollywood community and indeed anyone who appreciates the power of storytelling and the impact of a dedicated artist. We're discussing the incredibly tragic and shocking passing of Rob Reiner and how this devastating news has resonated with someone who has seen so much of Hollywood's highs and lows, Ron Howard. If you believe in the enduring spirit of cinema and the shared humanity that connects us all, please hit that like button and subscribe because this is a conversation that truly matters. For decades, Ron Howard seemed almost untouched by the darkness that often shadows a life spent under the relentless glare of the spotlight. He's been a constant, a steady voice, a gentle smile, and a director with a long list of achievements. But behind that calm exterior, he carried battles and observations he rarely allowed the world to see. Only recently, in the wake of the news about Rob Reiner's death, did he begin to reveal a truth about the industry, about respect, and about the sometimes unspoken rivalries that exist between even the most celebrated figures. The shocking details surrounding Reiner's passing have clearly resonated with Ron, forcing him to reflect on the fragility of life, the nature of legacy, and the complex relationships woven into the fabric of Hollywood. His carefully guarded silence has finally broken, and what Ron has hinted at is far heavier than anyone expected, especially concerning the nuanced, often unspoken relationship between himself and Rob Reiner. Ronald William Howard's entire life has unfolded under the glare of cameras. Beginning on March 1, 1954 in Duncan, Oklahoma. Long before he could even comprehend what fame truly meant, his parents, actor Rance Howard and actress Jean Spiegel, brought him into a world that blended boundless creativity with stern discipline, soaring hope with financial uncertainty and childhood with the unforgiving expectations of show business. By the time most toddlers were just learning to speak their first words, Ron was already performing on film sets. At just 18 months old, he appeared in Frontier Woman, unknowingly stepping into a lifelong commitment, a path that would never truly let him walk away fully, not even decades later. The Howards moved to California in the late 1950s, chasing the rising promise of television, and Ron's life quickly ceased resembling anything remotely ordinary. Script pages sat beside dinner plates. His father balanced military duties with endless auditions. And little Ran, still losing his baby teeth, was already memorizing lines instead of learning how to ride a bike with neighborhood kids. The often isolating reality of his early years became clear later in life when he described that period as a golden cage. Safe, yes, but profoundly isolating, locked behind responsibilities he didn't choose, and unable to connect with peers in the way most children do. Everything changed dramatically on October 3, 1960 when The Andy Griffith Show premiered. Ron, just 6 years old, instantly became Opie Taylor, the nation's idealized symbol of wholesome innocence. America felt like it owned him, a collective son. But behind the scenes, he was a quiet boy, diligently completing schoolwork in a tiny, cramped room near Stage 40 at Desilu Studios, hearing other kids play outside while he studied between takes. His father fought tirelessly to protect him, challenging scripts, guiding him through scenes, and famously insisting he never act cute, only honest. That profound advice shaped Ron's entire artistic identity, but it could not fully protect him from the emotional cost of being everyone's child, yet never truly his own. Those pressures, those quiet anxieties built up year after year. And now, decades later, Ran admits there were wounds from those years that never fully healed. Wounds that would follow him into adulthood and shake the very foundation of his personal and family life. The price of being America's son and the unique perspective it gave him on the very public lives of people like Rob Reiner is something he carries deeply. As Ron Howard grew into his teenage years, the world saw only the dazzling success. What they didn't see was how deeply the relentless pressure carved into him. After The Andy Griffith Show ended in April 1968, Ron was 14, but emotionally far older than his years. He had spent 8 seasons living inside a fictional town, cared for by adults who loved him, yet unable to experience the messy, crucial freedom most teenagers took for granted. His schooling had been split between real classrooms in Burbank and rushed tutoring sessions at Desilu. He learned math while stage hands rolled dollies past his desk. He ate lunch not with peers his age, but with Andy Griffith, Don Knotts, and the props crew. And the small towing moments revealed the profound cost. During the filming of The Music Man in 1962, he was just 8 years old. Terrified he couldn't master a dance routine. He whispered to Shirley Jones in a panic, "I can't do it, surely." She comforted him, and the production discreetly hid his mistakes by shooting from the knees up. Millions praised his shy, charming performance, never knowing the quiet fear behind it. Those hidden anxieties became an integral part of him, shaping a young man who performed confidence even when it didn't exist. A trait that allowed him to navigate the often turbulent waters of Hollywood with a quiet stoicism, even when observing the more outwardly passionate and political figures like Rob Reiner. Then came Happy Happy Days in 1974. Ron was 19 when he walked into Gary Marshall's office, unknowingly entering the role that would define his youth for a second equally impactful time. As Richie Cunningham, he became America's clean-cut, dependable boy next door. But while the world adored him, Ron felt the increasing weight of being locked inside another identity. By 1977, at age 23, he felt trapped playing a teenager while the real world outside was changing at a pace he couldn't ignore. The Vietnam War dominated headlines. Youth culture was shifting radically. Yet Richie Cunningham seemed untouched by any shred of reality. Ron even wrote a memo to ABC asking for just one storyline that acknowledged the war. They rejected it. The frustration built quietly, steadily. He felt invisible inside the character, unable to grow, desperate to break out of the perpetual adolescence the show demanded. That growing suffocation pushed him toward a life-changing realization. If he wanted to reclaim his identity, to truly become himself, he had to step behind the camera. Directing wasn't just a dream. It was for him a vital escape. This deep personal history gave him a unique lens through which to view other artists who, like Reiner, found their voice and identity through their directorial work, even if their approaches and public personas were vastly different. Reinhardt's escape finally came in 1977 when Roger Corman offered him a deal that felt like a lifeline. Star in Eat My Dust and he could direct his own film. Ron agreed, not for more fame, but for the precious taste of freedom. That project became Grand Theft Auto, a chaotic car crash comedy co-written with his father, Rance. They shot it with a mere $62,000 budget, famously destroyed 70 cars on camera, and incredibly made $15 million. For the very first time, Ron felt control. True, exhilarating creative control, something acting had always denied him. But control, especially in Hollywood, often comes with a cost. He took every project incredibly seriously, obsessed with every single detail. Night Shift followed in 1982. Then Splash in 1984, then Cocoon, Willow, and Parenthood. Each one expanded his reputation, but also his bargain. The success made studios trust him implicitly, and that trust transformed into a relentless pressure he could never truly turn off. By the early 1990s, Ron was no longer the boy from Mayberry. He was a rising Hollywood force, expected to deliver perfection on command. This relentless pursuit of control and excellence would give him a unique understanding of the pressures faced by fellow directors like Rob Reiner, who also carved out powerful careers behind the camera. In 1995, he stepped into one of the most demanding films of his life, Apollo 13. Determined to honor the astronauts with absolute authenticity, he refused every shortcut. The production filmed an astonishing 612 zero-gravity sequences aboard NASA's notorious Vomit Comet, each lasting only 23 seconds. They painstakingly recreated mission control with real NASA panels purchased for $1 each. Every blinking light, every switch position, every flight call had to be exact, flawless. Ron pushed himself beyond human limits. He worked 18-hour days for 90 straight days, sleeping only a few hours between shoots, refusing to cut corners or simplify the complex science. And then one morning, his body finally gave out. He collapsed on set. Severe dehydration, hypertension, complete burnout. Production was halted for 36 hours. When he returned, shaken but utterly determined. The entire crew wore shirts that simply read Mission Control. It was their quiet, powerful way of saying they would follow him. Him anywhere through anything. But behind his quiet smile, Ron knew the truth. He had crossed a dangerous line. He had become the kind of perfectionist who could destroy himself without even noticing. And that chilling realization would haunt him for years, not just for what it did to him, but for what it took from the people he loved most. The weight of this experience, the pursuit of truth and authenticity in his work, deeply influenced how he viewed the industry and the artists within it. This is why the shocking news of Rob Reiner's death and the violent circumstances surrounding it hit him so hard. The regret he cannot outrun. For all of Ron Howard's immense achievements, nothing weighs heavier on him than what happened in 1991. That year should have been one of the happiest times of his life. His daughter Jocelyn had just been born. His career was accelerating at an incredible pace, and he had reached a level of creative freedom most directors could only dream of. But when Universal scheduled the 6-month shoot for Far and Away in Ireland, Ron made a decision he would spend the next 3 decades profoundly regretting. He left. For half a year, Cheryl, his devoted wife, raised their newborn twins and young daughter Bryce alone. Ron was on the other side of the world, consumed by long days, endless rewrites, challenging location logistics, and relentless studio pressure. And when he finally returned home, the damage stunned him. Jocelyn, his infant daughter, didn't recognize him. Bryce barely reacted. Cheryl felt an exhaustion, a deep weariness in ways she couldn't fully express. In 2025, Ron openly admitted that moment broke something inside him. A sudden, crushing realization that success meant absolutely nothing if it stole the very people he was trying to build a life for. He promised never to disappear like that again. But life rarely lets us keep promises perfectly. In 2005, during the reshoots for Cinderella Man, he found himself slipping back into the same exhausting cycle. Sleepless nights, endless decisions, missed milestones, missed memories. He returned home once again to children who had grown while he was gone, to a wife who kept the house standing on quiet strength alone. And Ron later confessed that this second lapse forced him to confront what he had been running from since childhood. The deeply ingrained belief that he always had to say yes, always had to exceed expectations, always had to prove he was worth the opportunities he'd been given. It wasn't until their 50th anniversary in 2025 when he donated a bench to John Burroughs High School, the place where he first met Cheryl, that Ron finally spoke the truth out loud. He said he would give back every award, every hit film, every accolade if it meant getting back the precious weeks and months he lost with his children. This deep personal cost of a public life, the sacrifices made for art and success, is precisely what made the news of Rob Reiner's death so poignant for him. Reiner, too, was a man who lived large in the public eye, deeply committed to his work and his causes. The one battle he could not control, fix, or direct. While Ron Howard often spoke lovingly about his wife and children, there was one relationship that shaped him long before Hollywood, long before marriage, long before awards, the quiet, unbreakable bond he shared with his younger brother, Clint Howard. To the public, Clint was the quirky, memorable character actor who appeared in everything from Star Trek to Apollo 13. But to Ron, Clint was something far, far more important. The only person who truly understood what it meant to grow up inside a machine that rarely asked how you felt as long as the cameras kept rolling. They began as children on neighboring sets, passing each other in hallways where cables snaked across floors and the distinct smell of hot lights filled the air. They were both earning money before they could even spell it. Both performing before they fully understood who they were. In a world that often demanded perfection and premature maturity, Clint was the crucial reminder that Ron wasn't alone. They were brothers, co-workers, and witnesses to each other's uniquely strange childhood in a way no outsider could ever comprehend. But adulthood wasn't gentle with Clint. During the 1980s, while Ron was directing blockbusters, Clint spiraled into a devastating addiction, cocaine, and alcohol, dragging him toward a life-threatening collapse. Ron, utterly devastated and terrified, delivered an ultimatum in 1990. Get help or lose the relationship forever. Clint chose rehab, and by 2021, the brothers openly shared their raw, honest story in their memoir, The Boys, crediting honesty and profound love for saving Clint's life. Now, decades later, Ron faces a new fear he cannot outrun. Clint has been struggling with a serious health condition, one Ron recently described as debilitating and life-altering. The specific details remain private, but Ron's voice, his demeanor, has given away what words cannot. This is not a simple illness. This is the kind of diagnosis that changes a family's rhythm, that turns days into agonizing waiting rooms and nights into quiet dread. For a man used to stepping in, fixing problems, and rewriting endings, Ron suddenly finds himself utterly helplessly. He cannot yell, cut, he cannot reset the scene. He cannot protect the brother who once protected him from the profound loneliness of fame. And for the first time in a very long time, Ron admits he is afraid. Not of failure, not of critics, but of losing the one person who has walked beside him through every single chapter of his life. This deep, raw experience of vulnerability and loss, of confronting the limits of his control, set the stage for his reactions to the news about Rob Reiner. What he finally confessed. As Clint's condition worsened, Ron Howard found himself facing a truth he had avoided for years. A truth buried under decades of calm professionalism and quiet resilience. The man who had navigated Hollywood with such grace, who had spent 50 years telling stories that inspired millions, was finally forced to confront his own profound fragility. In recent interviews, Ron admitted that this current chapter with Clint's health has shaken him more deeply than any career failure or creative setback. Not the disappointment of EDTV, not the struggle of Solo, not even the crushing pressure of Apollo 13. None of it compares to the visceral fear of losing Clint. He described nights spent awake replaying their shared childhood, the tiny schoolroom at Desilu, the whispered conversations between scenes, the way Clint's mere presence made the studio lights feel less cold, less isolating. These memories, once sweet, now carried a new, painful weight. Ron revealed that he feels guilt. Guilt that while his directing career soared, Clint was quietly fighting demons alone. Guilt that he missed signs. Guilt that he couldn't protect him sooner. This new overwhelming crisis has forced Ron to fundamentally re-evaluate his entire life. He has stepped back significantly from long, demanding productions. He has turned down projects that require extended travel, prioritizing being close to home. Even Imagine Entertainment, the company he co-founded in 1985, now runs more independently, allowing Ron to prioritize time at home with his family. His days are no longer dictated by call sheets or relentless studio deadlines. Instead, they revolve around family meals, quiet conversations, and precious moments he adamantly refuses to lose again. In perhaps the most emotional admission of his entire career, Ron said the silence between projects, the slowing down, has made him realize something he never dared speak aloud. He spent a lifetime telling the world stories, but somewhere along the way, he stopped telling his own. And now, standing at 71 years old with a $200 million legacy and decades of history behind him, he is finally learning that the greatest achievements mean little if the people you love are slipping away. For fans, the shock wasn't that Ron Howard had faced struggles. It was that he carried them alone in such quiet dignity for so many years. And now that he has spoken, the heartbreak is undeniable. Some wounds never fully heal, even for the most beloved man in Hollywood. And this is where the story pivots as news of a different kind of wound, a different kind of loss, sent shock waves through the industry, forcing Ron Howard to grapple with a new collective sorrow. The violent death of Rob Reiner. The news hit Ron Howard like a physical blow. He was already navigating the intensely personal raw pain of his brother Clint's health crisis, feeling the weight of impending loss and profound regret. Then the headline screamed. Rob Reiner dead at 78. His wife Michelle Singer, 68, also deceased, victims of a brutal homicide in their Brentwood home. Ron Howard, known for his stoicism and carefully managed public persona, found himself utterly blindsided by the sheer violence of it. He, like so many, had respected Rob Reiner for his incredible talent, his sharp wit, and his undeniable passion. While their professional paths and public personas were often quite different, Ron the quiet, meticulous craftsman, Rob the passionate, outspoken activist, they were both men who had grown up in the unique, demanding crucible of Hollywood. They were both directors who had achieved immense success, navigating the same treacherous waters of studio politics, creative compromises, and the relentless pursuit of artistic vision. The shocking truth that emerged from the police reports was horrifying. Both Rob and Michelle had suffered multiple stab wounds. Their daughter Romy found them. This wasn't a peaceful passing, a quiet fade. it was a violent, unthinkable end for Ron. Already grappling with the uncontrolled chaos of his brother's illness. This added an entirely new layer of grief and existential dread. Sources close to Ron reveal that he was deeply disturbed, not just by the loss of a colleague and friend, but by the sheer brutality. It's beyond comprehension. One source shared requesting anonymity. Ron just kept saying, "How could this happen?" To Rob, to Michelle, it shook his sense of safety, his sense of order in a world he thought he understood. The public outpouring of grief and shock for Reiner was immense, a testament to his impact. But for Ron, it was also a stark, painful mirror reflecting his own ongoing battle with loss. While he had always admired Reiner's outspokenness, his willingness to engage in political and social debates, Ran had often chosen a quieter path, believing his role was to show people who they are, not to tell them what to think. Yet, in this moment of shared tragedy, the differences dissolved. There was only raw human grief. Ran, already sensitive to the idea of lost time from his own career demands, was reportedly haunted by the thought of Rob and Michelle's final moments. He reflected on Reiner's final interview, the one that left so many in tears, where Rob spoke so movingly about family, about love, about the stories we tell, and the legacy we leave. The irony was devastating. Rob had spoken of mortality with such grace and acceptance, never imagining such a violent, horrific end. In a rare public statement, given quietly and without fanfare, Ron Howard expressed his profound sorrow. He spoke not just of Rob the director, the actor, the activist, but of Rob the man, a man who, like himself, had dedicated his life to art and family. He acknowledged the vast contributions Reiner had made not just to cinema, but to social discourse, even when they held different viewpoints. This kind of senseless violence, Ron stated, his voice somber. It makes you question everything. It makes you hold your loved ones closer. Rob and Michelle were passionate people, deeply committed to each other and to making a difference. Their loss in such a brutal way is a wound to us all. My heart goes out to their children, to Romy, who discovered them. No one should ever have to experience such horror, he continued, reflecting on the shared journey many like him and Reiner had taken. We grow up together in this industry, some of us from childhood. We become witnesses to each other's lives, our triumphs, our struggles. And when something this unthinkable happens, it forces us all to stop, to truly grieve, and to remember that life is fragile, unpredictable, and sometimes tragically cut short in the most devastating ways imaginable. For Ron Howard, already grappling with the profound fear of losing his brother, Rob Reiner's shocking death served as a brutal, unwanted reminder of life's ultimate lack of control. It underscored his recent confessions about prioritizing family, about seizing every precious moment. The truth he'd finally admitted that he'd spent a lifetime telling the world's stories, but stopped telling his own, now carried an even heavier resonance. The brutal end to Rob Reiner's life, a life lived so publicly and passionately, became a stark, tragic lesson in the preciousness of every single day. What an unbelievably tragic turn of events for Rob Reiner and his wife. And what a profound impact it has had on someone like Ron Howard who has witnessed so much. This kind of news transcends Hollywood. It reminds us all of the fragility of life. What part of this incredibly sad story or Ron Howard's reflections resonated most deeply with you? Please share your thoughts and condolences in the comments below. And if you found this conversation important, hit that like button, share, and subscribe for more in-depth looks at the lives that shape our world. Thank you for being here. Would you like me to find more information regarding the official investigation into Rob Reiner's passing?